morning, everybody. My name is Scott Ugell. I'm a lawyer in New City. Some of you know me as a practicing attorney, but some of you also know me as town justice in town of Clarkstown. I've been town justice for 20 years. And having said that, I want to say, first, thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. And second, I want to say how refreshing it is to stand or to be speaking in front of a group while you're all here voluntarily. Today I want to talk about some of the things that you might want to know or to be able to share with some of your friends or some of the people in your office or people in your neighborhood, at church, synagogue, at mosque, in your capacity as real estate agents, in your capacity as members of our government to help clear up some of the misconceptions about foreclosures in New York and to give you some guidance. So first let me tell you, next week I'll be celebrating my 25th year practicing law, and I spent almost my entire career, 25 years, working in the real estate capacity in one capacity or another. Now, the foreclosure industry, admittedly, is a relatively newer industry for most lawyers. It's been going on, of course, since the beginning of time. But what's happened in the last maybe 5 years or so has been a phenomenon that I don't think anyone could have really ever predicted. So let's talk about a few things I think it's important. If you look at the materials, there's a list of some of the issues that they had asked us to talk about today. So let me start at the very beginning with you, and then I'll take any questions gladly from any of you. Besides being a lawyer and a judge, I've also been a real estate agent for almost 30 years. I put myself through law school, selling homes, real estate, predominantly on Long Island, where I grew up. I grew up by Jones Beach, and I came to Rockland about 20 years ago. So first thing, let's make believe that you or someone that you love gets a letter from a bank saying that you have missed a mortgage payment and you are in potential of being defaulted on your mortgage. Okay. First thing you have to know is that if that ever happens, the best thing to do, obviously, is always to contact the bank and tell them that you're having some difficulty and try to get them to help you and work with you. Sometimes they will, but most of the times I have found that banks are disgusting. They don't care about you, and they will lie to you. You'll speak to a Jane on Monday, you'll speak to Sam on Tuesday, you'll speak to Steve on Wednesday, and you'll get a different answer every single day. And that means that you have to be very careful and you really can't trust them. So the second important thing you have to know is you or someone you love should get professional assistance. Now, not everyone can necessarily afford an attorney, and good attorneys like myself don't come cheap. That's the truth, and there's reason for that. But there's the Housing Coalition. So for those of you who don't have who don't have resources, the Housing Coalition is a tremendous resource, and I'm very proud of the work that they do. I don't consider them in any way competition with my office or what we do, because there's plenty of work out there for everyone, and I want to see people get help. In my capacity as town justice, I preside over landlord-tenant proceedings. I see people come to my court. I see what goes on. I see the torment and the difficulty and the humiliation they suffer. And I don't like to see that in any capacity. So to the extent that someone that you know or you has difficulty in that area, please contact a professional. And for those who don't have the resources, the Housing Coalition has great people. I know a lot of them. I see a lot of them when I'm in court, and I know they do a great job for people. And so if you can't hire a private lawyer, or if you or someone you love can't hire a private lawyer, I suggest you contact the Housing Coalition and let them at least help you from the very beginning. Okay, so you speak to a bank, someone gets a letter, they fall behind on their mortgage, we want to contact a professional. Here's the misconceptions. If a person falls behind their mortgage, can the bank just come and evict you? No. What has to happen? After a person falls behind on their mortgage, typically about 3 months, that's typically the threshold, 3 months. Then a bank will send a letter telling you that your mortgage has been accelerated, which means that if you have a 30-year mortgage and you have 20 years left, they can say, okay, we've accelerated your mortgage, which means you owe us all the money right now. And they can do that because mortgage notes have those components built into them. That's very true. But before they can take any action, a bank has to hire a law firm, and they have to serve what's called a summons and a complaint. After a summons and a complaint is filed, the homeowner who's in default has to answer, and that's an official document. But here's another misconception. Even if someone doesn't really answer the summons and complaint right now in New York, they're not in jeopardy of having their house taken away in 1 month, in 2 months, 3 months or more, because what's happened now is because of the change in New York State rules, there is a requirement that all foreclosures go to what's called a settlement conference. Settlement conference was created by the New York courts and the legislature, and it's run by a man, a very fine gentleman who's been practicing law as long as I've been alive. It's not me, his name is Sam Adelson. Sam Adelson is the settlement conference part chief, who then will preside over any of these proceedings. And all you have to have in order to go to Mr. Adelson's part and be heard, it has to be a primary residence, and you typically have to have a job or some level of income so that you can discuss what's called a loan modification. What is a loan modification? It's really only two things. A loan modification is designed to help people keep people in their homes. Now, I'm a very active member of what's called NACBA, the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys. Been active in that since the 1990s. And what NACBA does is we lobby members of Congress to try to convince them to provide legislation, rules, or other types of methodologies to help keep people in their homes. We sponsored legislation 2 years ago, which was a rule which would have amended the bankruptcy code, which would have allowed bankruptcy court judges to modify people's mortgages to help keep people in their homes. It passed the House. We went to Washington. I lobbied Elliot Engel. I went to Nita Lowey's office and others. We spoke with them. We got their support. Nita Lowey supported it. Elliot Engel supported it. Unfortunately, folks, here's the problem. It passed the House. It couldn't pass the Senate. Why can't it pass the Senate? Because banks have too much control over your government, and that's a real problem. October 17, 2005, the bankruptcy legislation was introduced, which amended the bankruptcy code, which was so lopsided in favor of the banks. It created a lot of problems for a lot of people. And I have very little time today. I'm so sorry that I can't go into all the things that I'd like to talk to you about or have been working on for all these years, but essentially bankruptcy, Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, is one of the most effective ways to help protect your family and protect your home in the event that, God forbid, you or someone you love gets into a situation where they're in foreclosure. Let's go back to what I was talking about for a second. Okay, so a loan modification. It's really only two things. A loan modification is designed to help keep people in their homes. What does it do? It's a modification of your mortgage note. And what it would do is it would lower your interest rate and stretch out the life of the loan for up to 40 years from origination. Okay. Here's what it doesn't do. Here's a major misconception. It doesn't take off any of what you owe on the principal. So there are many people who come to my office who have not paid their mortgage, in some cases, for a year or more. I know it sounds crazy, but I wouldn't lie to you, I'm a lawyer. It's true. So if you have arrears, let's make believe your typical mortgage payment is $3,000 a month. You have to pay your mortgage in 6 months. You owe $18,000. Does a loan modification remove the arrears that you paid $18,000? No. It tacks it on. That's called capitalizing. It capitalizes the arrears, puts it on the mortgage note that's currently in place. They try to lower the interest rate and stretch out the life of the loan. Yes, if you lower the interest rate and you stretch out the life of the loan, your monthly mortgage payments will be significantly reduced. That's a critical component. That is a loan modification, and that's what's available. Now, how do we determine what's the amount of interest that you might have to pay and what your payment should be? It's very simple. It's a program called, many of you know, it's called HAMP. HAMP is a program that was designed by President Obama. Nothing against President Obama, but his mortgage HAMP program that they created does not help many people. It has failed miserably. There's only a few 100,000 people in America that have gotten a HAMP loan. There are millions of people who it hasn't worked. It should be improved. It should be increased. If we had passed the legislation that we worked on to amend the bankruptcy code, you wouldn't need HAMP, because the legislation that we worked on a few years ago, which was called Helping Families Stay in Their Homes, that was the name of the statute, would allow bankruptcy court judges to slice off the difference between your mortgage note and the value of your home. So if you had a $500,000 house, which you bought, you or someone you loved had bought a few years ago during the housing market when people were buying houses out of control and they were getting 100% financing. 100% financing was typically came in the form of what's called an 80 and a 20. Lenders would give you an 80% first, 20% second mortgage, and you could buy a, you or somebody you love to buy a house with a virtually no money down. In some cases, they give you more than the purchase price because there are fees and taxes that are involved. That's what happened. So the person buys a house for $500,000 at the height of the market in 2007. Today, the market collapses, and the house that was $500,000. It's now worth $300,000. How do you find where you live? So the statute was designed to shave off the difference between what the person purchased the house for, but with the mortgage loan they purchased the house, and the value of the house today. So that value is now worth $300,000. Bankruptcy court judges in this legislation would have allowed the mortgage note to be reduced. Now, the principal would have been reduced. And then, of course, your mortgage note wouldn't necessarily, the interest rate wouldn't have to go down anymore because you'd be servicing such less principal amount, then that person could stay in their home.